Very warm welcome here in beautiful Kenya. Good to see all of you that you're showing this interest in our hybrid breeding activities. So very pleased with you here today. Why are we here today? Maybe you've seen it in the banner in the hall that we've already come a long way with our hybrid breeding activities. Already back in 2011 we started our hybrid breeding program, and now 14 years later down the road we have come so far that we've selected a first genotype which is good enough to enter into the Kenyan market, and we have applied for a commercial variety registration for this variety. And for us this is a big milestone, so we're very happy with this event and also happy to share this today with you. But let us first introduce ourselves. My name is Kenyan. I'm in business development at HZPC, and for this I'm also working on hybrid market introduction and preparing everything around it.
Yeah, my name is Samuel Ikonyo from Kenya. I support the young introduction of hybrid in Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you and welcome.
Hello, good morning. My name is Harman Braber. I work and live in Kenya since 3 years, and I'm responsible for all the trials on hybrids in Kenya.
Good. So what are we going to do this morning? First, Samuel will show you how it's farming like in Kenya, and he will share some information about the potato sector in Kenya. And then Harman will follow up with a overview of what we're doing on the breeding process in Metzelerweer in the north of the Netherlands, and after that he will show you what he is doing on all of his trials in Kenya, and I will conclude by telling you the ways how we could go from a very small true potato seed to real scale production, potato production farming in the open field. We will have a look to the genotype that we have selected as our first variety, and I will conclude with our next steps. Samuel?
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll start with a video.
At Royal HZPC Group, we don't just grow potatoes. We grow ideas. We grow solutions. We grow progress for a food-secure future. Since 2011, we've quietly been working on a revolution. Today, we share it with the world. Nova, hybrid true potato seeds. A new way to develop one of the world's most essential crops, not just from tubers, but also from true botanical seeds. By crossing two inbred lines, we create high-performing varieties, uniform, reliable, resilient. But the real breakthrough, Nova varieties offer disease-free starting material, clean, consistent, and available all year round, even in places where access to quality seed potatoes is limited. In regions where farmers face challenges with infected or unavailable tubers, hybrid breeding opens the door to healthier crops, resistant to devastating diseases like late blight. These varieties offer stronger growth. With Nova, we are crossing borders, reaching markets that were previously hard to reach or even out of reach, providing equal chances for every farmer. These varieties start small, very small, but can be propagated very fast. And we're not stopping there. With hybrid breeding, we can develop new varieties twice as fast as traditional methods. Small seeds, big change. Cleaner crops, stronger yields. New opportunities for farmers, for communities, for the planet. Royal HZPC Group, pioneering hybrid potato breeding, growing what the world needs next. a food secure future.
Yeah, that video was to welcome you to Kenya. So you're much welcome. You can see how beautiful Kenya is. And I'll move on to the next presentation. First of all, I would like you to locate where Kenya is. I don't know whether you can see it clearly. This is a map of Africa. Kenya is in Africa. And Kenya is also along the equator. So it's situated along the equator. And this map now gives you a close view of Kenya. It's bordering 3 countries. You've got Tanzania, you've got Uganda, Sudan, Southern Sudan, Ethiopia, and also Somalia. Of course, you can see Indian Ocean where it is located. And if you look at closely, you see the green color. The green color shows you the major potato growing zones in Kenya. So it cuts across this way and that way. And of course, we've got another area just close to the Indian Ocean. Those are the major areas where we grow potatoes. And you can see the pale green color. This is now showing you the emerging growing areas. So we are still expanding on the areas, potential areas. And yeah, there is also the yellow color. That is potential, but there are just a few satellite areas where we grow potatoes, and it is especially on the hill areas. So that's why you see the star. So that is Kenya. That's where we are. And I also want to give you an overview of potato industry in Kenya. Yeah, potato is the second most important crop in Kenya. This one comes after maize. Of course, we do a lot of maize because it's the main food crop. Here we call it the corn. And from maize we go to potatoes. Initially it was wheat, but wheat has been overtaken by potatoes. That means that most people are feeding on potatoes and also growing potatoes as a cash crop. So potato is a very important crop for our country because every food has got every meal has got a potato in it, and also there are people who are now doing it as a business, growing it for selling. So they make money from potatoes. Of course, most of the potato varieties that are table, and 90% of it is used for consumption as a table varieties. But recently, we also now expanding to processing. Of course, HZPC has brought many varieties for processing, so people are now moving to those varieties. So the processing industry is also growing. In total, we've got around 240,000 hectares of land, which now occupies the potatoes in one season. So that is the capacity. I will move to the smallholder farmer. We've got around 800,000 smallholder farmers. When I talk of smallholder farmers, I mean 1 to 2 acres of land per person or per farmer. So you can see it's very tiny. And of course, that one now occupies the other businesses like maize, dairy farming. That's where the homestead is. And this one happened because of subdivision of the land. So we do a lot of subdivision. Of course, farmers are facing a big challenge of seed. We are actually currently producing around 10% of the requirement of certified seed for potatoes. So if you have a demand of 35,000, you can imagine the deficit which we have in Kenya. And what happens is that most of those farmers, they still plant potatoes, but they normally rotate what they harvest. Or they go to the neighbor, buy what the neighbor has. If you can see the crop of the neighbor was very good, you go and buy there and plant in his farm. So that one is bringing a lot of problems in Kenya because of diseases. They don't know the crane, how the crane is for the seeds they are buying from the neighbors, and actually are resorting to a lot of difficulties and problems and challenges. If you move to the next slide, you see an example of a smallholder farmer. So this is a crop of one of our farmer, and you can see it is less than a quarter which has been planted. On the upper side, you can see the homestead of the farmer. On the upper side here, you can see another crop, that's corn, which is planted there. And maybe on the other side, it's not visible, but that's where the dairy farm is, where you just keep one cow or two. So if you go to the next photo, this is also showing you another example of a smallholder farmer. This is where you've planted the potatoes. Up there, those are trees. These are the homestead there. And of course, the fence is part of the trees which you cut to avoid the animals going to the farm. Moving to the next photo, this is also an example of a smallholder farmer. In most cases, you find most of the farmers are doing mixed cropping because you have a very small piece of land, you want to grow maize, you want to grow potatoes, you also want to grow some napier grass for the animal, so you can cut and feed the animals. You also want some trees for the firewood because they use the trees to cut and make firewood for cooking. So this is the kind of a farmer we are talking in Kenya. And all these challenges, we want to solve them with the hybrid because they will be able to access fast cleaning materials from the hybrid. They also be able to get hybrid near where they are. So there are several challenges, and that's where now I'm going. Of course, I've mentioned about certified seeds, and we don't do seed importation. Unlike the other countries where you can import a container of seed from Netherlands to Kenya, it is not allowed. So when you want to do any seed production, you have to start either from in vitros, or you have to go to main tubers, which you can import, and then you start now multiplying from that level. So it's a big challenge in Kenya, and it has been there for many years now, and this is also limiting the availability of certified seed to our farmers. Of course, crop protection is a very big issue, very costly. Most of the fungicide are manufactured in Europe and taken to Africa, and therefore the cost is very high. And most of the smallholder farmers will not be able to access those chemicals. And if they access them, even they don't know when they should spray. So some who are capable, they will go for a very long distance to buy the product. Sometimes the cost, the transaction cost is higher even the cost of the chemical. And that one makes it difficult even to control those diseases. Especially for late blight, which needs a consistent control. You find that farmers normally spray once or twice within the crop cycle. And within that period, you find that the crop has been affected, it has been cleared by blight, because they don't have even information on when the disease will occur. We don't have the weather forecast or real-time information when should you spray. So those are some of the challenges. Of course, the classical breeding is slow compared to hybrid breeding, and that one will be one of the game changer. There is also very few seed producers. We have very strict regulations on seed production, and this one makes people not to be able to, many people not to invest in seed production. And of course, even in those who are doing the seed production, the distance between one producer to the other one is very long. You are talking of maybe 400 kilometers where you need to travel to buy maybe 2 or 3 bags of the piece of land which you have as a smallholder farmer, which is not economical. So you find that's a big challenge, and that's why they end up buying from the neighbor. So the hybrid technology will make it very easier for them to access. You can actually carry the seeds in your pocket. We can establish several seed multipliers within the country. They can produce some seeds and also sell tubers to the neighboring farmers. So those are some of the challenges, and that's why we are saying hybrid will be a game changer to our farmers. Of course, it's similar to the other neighboring countries, East African, and actually Africa as a whole. So hybrid will be able to solve those challenges in Africa.
how farming in Kenya looks like and what are the challenges, and then of course we have a new innovation, hybrid potato, so we want to see how it can fit. And I also want you to talk through the process, how we get to those hybrids. So short timeline. So in 2007, there was a scientific breakthrough. It's made it possible to make inbred lines and to do inbreeding on potato. So in the breeding world, this is nothing new. A lot of crops went through that process. Like probably any tomato you've ever eaten in your life is a hybrid. So it's nothing in the breeding world, nothing new, but in potato it was new, and it's actually also, it's been quite hard. But then in 2011 we also started investing in it. In 2021, so imagine that's 10 years that we were doing continuous crossing, 2 seasons a year. Imagine the amount of crosses that were made. And also around 2020 we started testing in Kenya. And in 2022 I also moved to Kenya, and we tried to basically make the trials a bit bigger, a bit more professional, and with a bit more reliable data. And in 2025 we reached another milestone, and that milestone was that we found a viable product in our breeding trials. So that's good news. So how did it go? So I can just show you some pictures. This is our research facility in Metzlawier. You can see the greenhouses where all the breeding happens. We have our labs there. We have a lot of scientists working round the clock to do a lot of research on everything you can imagine about potato, ranging from diseases to genetics to agronomy, you name it, and there's a specialist for it. This is how the berries look. Of course, you've all seen flowering potato fields along the roadside, but those flowers actually make berries sometimes, and those berries you can harvest and you can extract the seeds. Seeds look like this. They are very tiny. Imagine the size of a tomato seed. So imagine how many plants can grow from such tiny seeds. This is how the greenhouse looks. So this is not maybe how you are used to see potatoes, but all of these are different genotypes. All of them are labeled. All of them we know which one is which. And then actually we design a crossing program. Actually, that's what Edwin is, one of the masterminds of our hybrids here. And he will decide, okay, what to cross with what. So you can see we have those rings, and then as the plants grow, they can actually grow quite tall. You can make a lot of crosses on the same flower or on the same plant. One of the interesting things about those seeds is, of course, that you can make a seedling, and those seedlings can go to the field. But Gert-Jan will talk a bit more about that. This is just to give you an impression of how it looked in the Netherlands when we plant seedlings in the field. Again, the seeds, again, imagine how many plants you can grow from this tiny cup of seeds. So yeah, in terms of logistics, it's very easy to move with those seeds. And of course, that's one of the reasons why we can establish basically a large trialing site in Kenya. We can't import tubers, but we can import those seeds. So that means actually we can make new test hybrids, ship all the test hybrids to Kenya, and within a couple months we can see the performance of all those new hybrids in Kenya. And that's of course what we want. Again, seeds. So now I want to talk a little bit about my work in Kenya, the trials. So we have several trial locations, and the main idea behind the locations is that we have different altitudes, we have different type of disease pressures, we have different soil types, weather patterns, and last but not least, we also have 2 seasons. So that means we can plant 2 potato crops each year. Yeah, one of those locations is particularly interesting because it's at really high altitude. It's like 2,800 meters above sea level. And if you think of Africa as a hot place, think again, this place is cold, it's rainy, it's foggy, and it has a lot of blight pressure year-round. So this is an ideal place to test our new hybrids. And actually the first time we did trials, it was terrible, because all of them just burned to the ground because of blight. And then as we progressed in the breeding cycle, we were actually able to put double resistances against late blight in our hybrids. And the first time I received those seeds, we were like, well, we better see if it works. So imagine 1 year before that, we did a trial with the non-resistant hybrids, sprayed them once or twice a week, and they still hardly managed to survive. 1 year later, we get the new hybrids, put them in the field, don't spray, and it stayed clean. So that was a really nice result, and it's also what Gert-Jan will tell a little bit more about on the new selected candidate. But it's just to give you an example of how we do the trialing. We really try to, we don't want to treat them like maybe like a Dutch farmer can do, taking the best care possible, because a lot of farmers, like Samuel explained, they are restricted in maybe the chemicals that they can access at a certain time, or maybe they don't have the labor available. So it's a tough place for potatoes to survive. So we have to make sure that we reflect that in our trials. Talking about trials, this is last month. We planted one of our locations. So here you can see that each of the orange bags here has potatoes. You can see that, well, this is actually not a very, this is actually a small trial, but you can see that each of the bags here, they have a different variety with different characteristics that we want to test in Kenya. So you can see how it looks. And after 60 days, this is how it looks. You can again see that we still have those, you can see that we plant 2 rows, and you can see differences between variety, like this one is different from that one, this one stands out. So you can see that one of our colleagues doing the foliage assessment. So we have several moments, of course, in the growing season where we come to the field and we check how the potatoes are doing. And of course, Sam also always wants to have a peek into our new hybrids, because he's always eager to find the best ones. So we have very close ties between the breeding and research and the commercialization. So yeah, it's good that we have that close connection. Of course, it's all about the harvest. So at harvest again, you see that we harvest each plot. This is all done by hand, which is actually really common practice in Kenya. Most of the fields, even larger fields, are usually harvested by hand. One of the things, obviously, that we do is we measure, we weigh, but another important thing that we do is to just talk to the people that are on the farm, because often they are growers, so they know what to look for in a potato. So we just, often with Samuel, just come to the field and say, yeah, how do you like that one? Why not? What do you think of this? And it's interesting to note how people look at potatoes, and it's sometimes different than you would imagine, at least with a European mindset. So this is how we used to grade potatoes. It worked well, but this works better. So we also have a nice machine here that counts and grades all the tubers into the different classes, so we can get very detailed data. And here again you see all those bags all tied up, all with a label, so each of those bags goes all over. We'll have detailed data on those potatoes. So yeah, just to give you an idea, we are actually testing a lot of things in Kenya. This is Edwin again, very happy with the harvest. So after harvest, usually also people are very eager to take home potatoes. I've been told that in the Netherlands, if you do trials, those potatoes, they're not eaten. If I tell that to people in Kenya, they can't believe it. Usually our fields are completely clean after harvest, because everyone wants to just take home the potatoes and try them, and often people are very eager to taste our potatoes. This is another colleague that came over to help. This is a small trial that we did on the sprouting behavior and the greening behavior of the tubers. Just because these are important traits in the Kenyan market. Of course, we also cook. Actually, you can see here that we have a small kitchen where we fry and boil all those potatoes. We look into how they boil. We see how they fry. So you can see that here in the computer, this is a box. It takes a very nice picture, and you can actually see how the fries come out. Last, definitely not least, maybe even most important, the taste. So for that, we have our tasting panel where we do blind tasting. So we select our best varieties, and at some point, and then we also put the standard varieties, so the varieties that people are used to. We number them so people don't know what they're eating. We boil them, we fry them, and then we just ask people how they liked those potatoes. And it's actually very insightful because there are clear preferences. And also people are sometimes really harsh. We had comments like, oh no, not this, not this. So then you're sure that even though you liked a lot of those traits about this potato, better don't try it, because if it has a nasty taste, no one will buy it again. So yeah, just to give you an idea of all the different steps that we go through in the selection process to find the best varieties. Now, one of the other things that we do, of course, our trials serve the purpose that we want to find the best varieties, but of course we also want to find the best parents. So in hybrid breeding, the parent is very important. So that means if Edwin makes new hybrids, like several hundred hybrids, those hybrids have different parents. And what we're interested in is to find the best parents behind those hybrids. So if you find, for instance, that one parent made 10 hybrids and all of them had a good performance in the field, you better take care of that parent and make sure that either you make more hybrids with it or you combine it with other desired qualities. So that's how we try to not only find the best hybrids, but also find the best parents. And of course the data that all this data that we collect in the process goes back to Netherlands, goes back to the breeders, and that will help them to, again, make better parent lines. So it's an iteration, it's a closed cycle of testing, feedback of the data. That data will be used again to make new and better performing parent lines. This is not a trial. Actually, after harvest, of course, we have so many potatoes that we have to eat them, so we usually slaughter some chickens, buy some local vegetables, and make a lot of fries and enjoy our newly harvested hybrids. Gert-Jan.
Harman showed you a picture of the potato berries, how they look like, and also how the tiny little seeds look like. In the ideal world, we would like to take the seeds, sow them into the open field and wait until you get a decent crop. But we tried that, and that's not as easy as it sounds, because the seeds are very fragile, very small, and you need perfect conditions to get a crop from direct sowing, and quite often that's not the case. The conditions are not that easy. So we got two other ways, at least for the time being, to get to a mature potato plant. Either you go via multiplication from the seed into a potato tuber, and you plant a potato tuber in the open field. So today's practice, as everybody is used to it. Or maybe working with an in-between solution, making a seedling or a plantlet from two potato seeds and put them in the open field. It is possible, but also there it requires extra attention, because you need to irrigate every day, you need to take care that the weed is not covering the little potato plantlets, so it requires focus and attention. I will show you some pictures how things go. This is a tray, and in every hole we put a very tiny seed. We put the trays after that in a germination room where we have a controlled environment for temperature and moisture so that they start to sprout. And after that they end up in the greenhouse. This is how it looks like. As I said, you can make mini tubers out of it and go to the open field from here. I will not show pictures because everybody knows how that looks like. But you can also put the plantlets in the open field like that. There's a little plug in it to serve the roots. You put them in the soil. You need to give water almost every day. But if you do that properly, then you end up with a nice crop. We as HZPC, for now we have decided to enter the market with potato tubers. Because farmers are used to tubers, conditions are very difficult. Most farmers cannot irrigate, so they're dependent on natural rain. And if you plant a tuber and if it doesn't rain, no problem. If it starts raining only after 3 weeks, no problem, the tuber starts to grow. So that's why we will enter the market with tubers. Yeah, this is the code name of the genotype that we selected. We have done 3 years in a row testing, twice a year, 2 seasons a year. And we have identified a genotype that is competitive against the benchmark that we use. And in this case, it's called a variety Shangi, which is a table potato variety, and it's representing almost 90% of the whole market in Kenya. Everybody knows the variety, so that was clearly also our benchmark. We are on par at yield and also quality traits like the frying quality, dry matter and also taste were good. But last but not least, what was really the trigger for us to select this variety was its double late blight resistance. And that makes all the difference in potato production in Kenya. Here you see a trial where we have 3 treatments. On the right side you see a full fungicide application. So you see that all the genotypes, including the benchmarks, are doing okay. Here you see a halfway treatment, and then you see already some dropping. And on the left there was no fungicide treatment at all. The genotype I just showed you are those two. So the here still performing well, and here they're actually the only one left. The rest has died off. If we zoom in, here you see the canopy of Shangi, highly infected, and the 2515 still standing strong. And the result of that after harvest, well, speaks for itself. And if farmers see this, then they're really triggered, because the disease pressure is enormous over there, and the risk of crop failure is very big. So quite often they end up with almost no crop, and in this case they can be more relaxed. So a few pictures of how the genotype looks like. It's a bit white to creamy, and we are now ready for entering the variety registration process. The performance trials will be planted in March of 26. The process will take 2 seasons, so March 27 we hope to have the variety officially registered, and then we will do 1 or 2 multiplications into commercial seed potato tubers, and then we will be ready to enter the market. So that's where we are, and we are very happy with this milestone that we have achieved. Similar happy to the farmers, and in the meantime we will also start testing this genotype in surrounding countries around Kenya, in the East African community, and roll it out from there. That's where we are today, And that was also our presentation. Thank you for your attention. Do you have